The first sign that lets you know that you're ready to date after a divorce is forgiveness. And what I mean by that is you're capable of forgiving yourself and forgiving people that you've had previous relationships with, whether they were long-term commitments or marriage. Unfortunately, most people don't do the forgiveness work. And how do you know if you've forgiven? Because most people are like, oh, I've forgiven. Well, if you have any anger, resentment, hatred, judgment, criticism, if those still reside in you about your ex, then you're not finished with the forgiveness process. Most likely, you're not finished with forgiving yourself. I will never disagree that your partner did terrible things to you and they should be held accountable for that. But if we still harbor anger and resentment, most people say, oh, I've forgiven them. Well, yet they're still angry and resentful. That means they haven't forgiven themselves, okay? Because if you're still angry and resentful, it means you haven't let yourself off the hook for being perfectly imperfect and getting in a relationship with this person. And so you're still stuck in that. And that's why they say that for every 3 years of marriage or a long-term relationship, we need 1 year of recovery. It takes us quite a while to drop the denial and accept responsibility for our part. That, shoot, I had many red flags or many opportunities to leave earlier, to whatever it may be, and I didn't do it. And so we deflect from that ownership by having anger and resentment towards them. The other thing about anger and resentment is we only have anger and resentment towards people that we care about. And so do you see, if I'm still angry and resentful at the ex, I'm still kind of in a relationship with them and I'm not quite ready. I haven't quite divorced myself from them and I have some more recovery work to do. Step number 2, or sign number 2 that you're ready to start dating again, is that you can take ownership of your past. You can take ownership of your part in maybe not the previous relationship, but both that and any other ones. In other words, you're not bringing that old self of you on a date. And here's how you'll know. If you are justifying the ways that you acted or behaved in the previous relationship, if you're not owning if you can't own your part and see that, then what you're presenting is a caricature of who you want to be and who you want the other person to see. Because if we can't openly share, yeah, I made this mistake and this mistake and this mistake. Now, I would have liked to have done better, but it was the best I could do at the time. And so, that's the part I played in the dissolving of our relationship. If we feel like we didn't play any part and it was always the other one, I'll say this as lovingly as I can, but we have a lot of growth to do and getting into reality, and we're definitely not ready to start dating. We still have a long road of recovery before we're ready for that. But if we're still hiding behind hiding our imperfections and the ways we were perfectly imperfect as we go into date, do you see what that means? We're afraid to show who we really are for the fear of losing this new potential partner. Well, do you see what that is? That's a rejection of us. That's saying, I don't love and accept my perfect imperfections. I don't want this person to know who I really am. And so I'm just selling them a vision of this idealized perfect self, which isn't reality. And someday they're going to find out. So do you see, if I can't own my perfect imperfections, if I can't share them willingly and equally with you, that means I'm not ready, because you're just going to get a fantasy version of me. And I haven't done the self-esteem, the self-rejection, and self-forgiveness work that is required after a divorce. And I'm just going to bring that old hurt version of me right back into this new one. And that's why they say, most second marriages end very quickly because of that. We haven't waited, we haven't done the healing work, and we just bring that old hurt person right into this new one. So that's number 2. The third one is this. You can tell you're not ready if you can't sum up your previous divorce or long-term relationship or relationships in one sentence. again, this kind of ties into number 2. What tends to happen, and this was a piece I had to own in myself, is we start dating again. And we start telling the story of our ex. And inside, there's this need for this new person to know that I'm a great person. That this person, and we will try and own our part, but we're selling them. Well, they did this and this and this. And we're making ourselves out to be the hero, even as we're owning our side. But we have to tell them all the details. And that pieces of it, maybe even all of it, weren't our fault. And that we did everything we could to make it right. And what I've seen is, I saw it in myself, and what I've seen in others is we're actually using this process to process out our previous relationship. It's not over because we're still processing it. But now we're trying to prove it to a stranger. And think of it, a stranger, somebody we've just met, like we can get them on their side. They have no history of us. They haven't made any judgments. So it's like the best audience we could get to get support because we're still recovering. And I knew, well, and I'll be honest with you, my first marriage, I wasn't fully over my first marriage until after the divorce of my second marriage. I didn't know it. I thought I was. But it wasn't until I had thought I had forgiven her, but what I realized is I hadn't forgiven myself. And that was a year or two, I can't remember exactly, but it was, or during the process of my second divorce, that I was able to completely forgive myself for the part I played in my first marriage. And so when people ask me about my marriages, I mean, obviously in these videos I share a lot of content about it because I'm trying to teach from those life experiences. But if I were out in public, it'd be my responses are pretty straightforward. I said, with my first marriage, it was just the best I could do with where I was at the time. I didn't know how to be a man. And therefore I didn't know how to act like a man in a relationship. And so I went and learned how to become a man. I mean, that's the truth. I didn't know how. And that's why I ended up with the perfectly imperfect first wife that I had who, did her best too. She did her best. That's how I see it. Now, my second marriage, I say, well, I hadn't recovered enough. I stopped doing what brought us together. Now, do you see here in both of those, I'm giving you I'm telling you what happened in both relationships, and none of it is about them. There's no story about them. It's all about me. It's the part I played and what I'm responsible for. That's recovery. That lets you know you're ready to date and begin the process of finding somebody new. If you still have long stories, if you still have anger and resentment, if you haven't forgiven yourself or forgiven them, and you can't sum it up in one sentence or couple of sentences that basically describe the same thing, if you can't do that, then I would say you're in that position of, for every 3 years you were together, 1 year of recovery. There's still some recovery to be done. And I'd encourage you to look at that, because we have to remember, all we ever attract and all we ever do is relive the pain from the past until we heal the pain from the past. And so until this work is done, we will just end up in the same place. And that's what I realized. My second marriage ended up in, a different but same result, because I hadn't quite finished the recovery work. Now, does that mean I shouldn't have been in a relationship? No. Am I saying you shouldn't even pursue one? That's not what I'm saying. We learn about and we get better at relationship in relationship. So, I'm not saying, live as a monk or a nun until you heal perfectly, because there's no such thing. But these are 3 red flags that you might want to pause a little bit before you proceed. All right, so let's move on to solutions. I'm going to send you to several videos that'll help you dig deeper on all of these. The first video is called How to Forgive Someone Who Hurt You. That will help you with the forgiveness. There's a second video called How to Learn to Trust Again. That'll help you learn to trust yourself, because that's what trust is. When we can't trust others, it's because we haven't done the forgiveness work, and therefore we don't trust ourselves yet. Okay? Number 3 is the 10 do's and don'ts for a great relationship. Those 3 videos will really help you get a grasp of where you are in this process as you begin dating again after divorce. And finally, I'd encourage you to take my free masterclass, Your Journey to Emotional Mastery, which can be found at my website, www.thegreatnessyou.com. And for those of you who really want to put yourself in the best position to create the love and connection that you deserve, I would encourage you to enroll and purchase my masterclass titled How to Create Lasting Love and Connection. This is a deep codependence work, deep healing work on previous relationships, and this will prime you and help you get to that place where you will seek out and be available for lasting love and connection. Again, that can be found at my website, www.thegreatnessyou.com. And again, it's called How to Create Lasting Love and Connection. It's a 3 masterclass series. I'd encourage you to take that bundle of classes. So there you have it. If you think this will help somebody, please share it. Leave me your comments. And as you navigate the journey of dating after divorce, make darn sure you enjoy that journey.